We are finally back after the 1-week break, meaning Chapter 257 has been released. So of course we will talk about that whole chapter in this video since there are some pretty hype revelations. I know the huge Black Flash last chapter was one thing, but I'll start by saying that Gege is cooking a mouth-watering dish this week. First and foremost, Gege reveals that Sukuna is somehow related to Yuji and is basically his uncle or something. I'll leave more details about this matter later in the video. For now, let's hop on to review the latest masterpiece from Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 257. Previously, before the week-long break, Yuji hits Sukuna with a black flash thanks to the opening created by LaRue, who activated his cutie honey to charm Sukuna. Obviously, that became a great deal because the ability from LaRue's heart catch was effective in landing huge damages on the King of Curses. However, that cliffhanger certainly leaves us with a lot of questions and theories, and I'm sure the whole JJK community has come up with speculations regarding the last scene. Don't worry, because that will all be answered in the next few minutes of this review video. Chapter 257 begins with a bit of a flashback showing Uraume and Sukuna talking on the rooftop of some random building. Uraume asks who Yuji really is, mainly because she notices his skill potential and some resemblances with her master himself. Uraume mentions that she senses these similarities before laughing at Yuji's hilarious expression, so I think it's safe to assume that this scene happened after Chapter 215. It was when Uraume suddenly interrupted the Yuji and Maki versus Sukuna battle, and they made their escape while making fun of Yuji's face. Apparently, he looks like the guy from some place called Harima Province, which, for everybody's information, was the hometown of exorcists. Well, putting that piece of information aside, Sukuna answers Uraume's question by telling her that Yuji is Kenjaku's child. Sukuna is aware that Kenjaku won't create offspring just for the sake of it though, and knows that he has some nasty plans to lay the groundwork for his schemes. With that said, Sukuna mentions that he believes Kenjaku chooses Jin Itadori, Yuji's father, to procreate with because he and Jin share the same soul. Sukuna further adds that he consumed a fragment of himself, which refers to his other half, to avoid starvation when his mother was knocking on Demise's door. That soul somehow wandered aimlessly on Earth until Kenjaku got his hands on it. I'll make it clear in case you haven't noticed it yet. The soul Sukuna refers to as Jin Itadori's. This means that somehow the soul of Sukuna's twin ends up on Yuji's father, so Kenjaku transplants his brain with his technique to Kaori to create a fitting vessel for the King of Curses. In simplest terms, Jin is Sukuna's twin's reincarnation, Yuji is Sukuna's nephew, and Kenjaku, of all people, is the King of Curses' sister-in-law. Honestly, the last one is the most absurd yet intriguing fact I learned from this chapter so far. Uraume, on the other hand, was surprised that one of Sukuna's fragments still exists. However, at this point, it is evident that Sukuna hates being born as someone's twin. After all, twins are considered bad luck in sorcerer families since one among them holds back the other half in terms of strength and cursed energy. One great example of this is Mai and Maki, and Sukuna doesn't really want to gamble who will become the superior one between him and his sibling. That's why consuming the dish, or so I call it, just to be safe, was his answer. Nonetheless, I already talked about the first page too much, and I'm sure I'll mention a bit of additional details about that in the final parts of the video. For now, the flashback ends with Uraume's inner thoughts, wondering if Yuji also has the latent potential equivalent to Sukuna, given that those two are related. We might acquire the answers to that question as we move on to the following panel. And man, Yuji looks absolutely fierce in this illustration. He's facing off with Sukuna, who doesn't look like he received significant damage despite the black flash from the last chapter. Even so, Yuji is not even bothered as he is still in the zone after awakening some sort of boost or power-up. It is evident here that the distance between the two is awfully close, which enables Yuji to grab one of Sukuna's hands to brush it away and hit another black flash. That doesn't end there because Yuji smashes one more at the King of Curses, making them his second and third consecutive black flashes in such a short time frame. This exchange of fierce blows pushes back the two and triggers the start of numerous expression changes that we will see from Sukuna later in the story. Despite the impact, Yuji lands on a pillar and calmly slices it using Sukuna's curse technique. Yes, you heard that right. The scissor patterns visible in the pillar Yuji is touching in this panel indicate one of the abilities that Yuji possibly acquired from his awakening. According to the narrator, Yuji currently possesses two curse techniques. First is the blood manipulation that we saw in recent chapters, and the second is Sukuna's curse technique, Mizushi, a sure-hit ability that slashes apart anything the user desires. In the first place, we already expect that Yuji will be able to use Sukuna's ability at some point in the series. GOJO has also anticipated this to occur, as mentioned in the early chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen. However, the reason as to how this happens becomes more intriguing, especially now that Sukuna and Yuji's connection has been revealed. Nonetheless, after sending the debris onto Sukuna's way, Yuji grabs his uncle's foot so as not to let him evade or escape. The position of his hands in this panel says it all. Another one is coming. Sukuna stops Yuji from hitting him again, using his curse technique, but Yuji doesn't care a bit about what he's planning. He straight up smashes Sukuna with a black flash. Somehow, Sukuna remains unfazed as he realizes that Yuji's imitation of Mizushi is slightly different in terms of representation and output. He also believes that the black flashes from Yuji are much more of a threat than the low-level Mizushi. We'll come back to the battle later, as the following page goes into a flashback to the time when GOJO still has his upper body intact. Ino is the main focus in this part as he seeks permission from GOJO, Shoko, and Ijichi to use Nanami's cursed tool. He thinks it's better to consult them first because they know Nanami better than him. The three discuss it for a bit and they agree on one conclusion. Let Ino use Nanami's weapon. GOJO sincerely allows Ino to do as he wishes because Nanami apparently trusts him the most out of anyone. With all that said, the flashback ends with Ino joining the battlefield and summoning a dragon, immediately ordering it to charge into Sukuna's body. The King of Curses looks a bit surprised as he becomes a victim of another sneak attack again because it seems like Ino is waiting for a chance all this time, given his position and location. The dragon relentlessly attacks Sukuna, while Ino, on the other hand, follows up using Nanami's weapon. Everything is going according to plan until Sukuna senses Yuji lurking behind him, charging for one more black flash. For who knows how many times now, Yuji landed one more black flash at Sukuna. And I guess it forces the King of Curses' composure to say goodbye? There's no denying that Sukuna looks 100% agitated, as he finally loses his cool because Yuji's black flashes are simply that awesome. He's hitting these strikes, which even GOJO mentioned, that rely on luck constantly without straying away from his zone, meaning that we can see more from here as the action scene goes on. Even Sukuna mentions that Yuji is activating these continuous black flashes like it's nothing, and he's not buying any of it. In fact, Sukuna's agitation is more to the level of rage because it is apparently vexing that Yuji wants to stand on equal ground as him. He is pushed back to the other side of the building, as we can see in these panels. Look at the shattered windows here and there. Ino is lying on the floor at the moment, contemplating the defeat of the dragon he summoned, while apologizing to Nanami for not being of much help in this current showdown. Personally, I believe he already did his part and deserves some praise for his efforts. He's selling himself short, obviously. But while Ino is having difficulties standing up due to his injured body, Sukuna maintains his balance and still has his mad smile as if ordering us to ignore his agitations earlier. Yuji uses the cracked windows as entrances to close the distance between him and Sukuna. The King of the Curses uses this opportunity to attack, but Yuji grabs his arm and throws Sukuna to the wall shortly after that exchange. Clearly, Sukuna's problems skyrocket each second since his high battle IQ can't even comprehend why Yuji is not affected by his combination of strikes and slashes. To be fair, there are wounded marks on Yuji's face due to the attacks earlier, but they are not enough to force the protagonist into backing down from their fight. Notice that Yuji, is also not saying much in his inner thoughts or external voice ever since the first black flash onto Sukuna. Now, I'm not saying that there's a major issue here. I just thought that this minor detail shows Yuji's focus and how high level that is, which is definitely related to his awakening and the zone needed to cast a black flash. Speaking of that skill, Yuji once again hits Sukuna with the set ability and probably weakens him at some point this time around. So far, Sukuna has received 6 black flashes as a gift from Yuji, and the end is still nowhere in sight. Don't forget that Yuji's attacks can directly hit and weaken Sukuna's soul. What's strange, however, is even with 6 straight black flashes, the King of Curses' control over Megumi's body still reigns. Also, I'll just add this one theory I've heard. Now that it is revealed that Sukuna is Yuji's uncle because Jin possesses the same soul as Sukuna's twin, maybe that is also the reason why Yuji can shatter Sukuna's soul with his bare punches and knuckles. Contrary to Maki, who has a weapon that can literally split the enemy's souls, soul-splitting knuckles don't really exist, so there's no way Yuji has that kind of overpowered cursed tool. I'm sure it'd be cool if there's something like that though. Moving on, the next panel shows Sukuna grabbing Yuji's face out of desperation. Like, man, you, the King of Curses, can't expect that a little effort like this is enough to shatter the protagonist's plot armor. True, this image here reveals that the right half of Yuji's face gets wounded, but it is also clear that our boy has absolutely no care at all. Yuji goes in a punching stance as this entire page is fully dedicated to providing another batch of Black Flash, making it the 7th one since the first crucial strike from the previous chapter. Yuji is really locked in, and no one's stopping this barrage of Black Flash. Wounds have also appeared on Sukuna's forehead, which was invisible just moments ago, as we are finally seeing obvious signs that these continuous attacks are definitely effective even on the outside. Sukuna's stress levels have escalated too, as he angrily screams at Yuji. The way he calls him also changes since the tone is not an insult or mockery like it has always been. This time we can see Sukuna's pure irritation at Yuji's existence, which is a huge step up if I have to say. Sukuna was going to counterattack, but he received a face-to-face with Nanami's blade, instead thanks to Ino, who throws the weapon as a last resort to assist Yuji. Same with Larue's case. Sukuna was rendered unable to move at will for a flash second. This allows Yuji to get into the stance for the repetitive yet most awaited attack. This is why I proclaimed earlier that Ino is selling himself short. His assists are not for naught, because what happened next is another clutch moment for their side. On Sukuna's blind spot, Yuji smashes the King of Curses back with his 8 consecutive Black Flash. And this is where chapter 257 ends. Although quite similar, this and the previous chapter finishes on a different note. It's true that chapter 256 ends with Yuji hitting Sukuna with a Black Flash too, but I must say that this latest one is extraordinary because Yuji manages to beat the record of the highest consecutive Black Flash strikes. This was previously held by Nanami, who can do 4 continuously. But with how things are going for Yuji now, I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks through his own record and lands more Black Flashes at Sukuna in the following chapters. He might even go plus ultra and reach a 2-digit number of Black Flashes, which is highly possible since Yuji is still in the zone. Furthermore, as Sukuna mentioned earlier, that guy is hitting Black Flash one after another like it's the most natural thing in the world. Putting all the factors GOJO said in chapter 256 aside, the success rate of Black Flash for Yuji is going higher and higher with every strike that he successfully lands. I also want to add something to the scene where Ino leaves everything to Yuji after throwing Nanami's sword on Sukuna's face. I just can't help but notice how similar it is to Choso looking after his brother, as if he's proudly sending him off to defeat the greatest nemesis of his life. It's just wholesome in a purely violent manga, to be honest. Nevertheless, Yuji's Black Flash showdown continues, and I'm curious to see how the King of Curses will handle the situation. Never forget that it is still Sukuna we are talking about here, and he still may have some tricks up his sleeve. That said, We can see in the panels earlier that Sukuna is accumulating some major damages, and Yuji, as I've said again and again, is still on the top of his game. Personally, I want to see the continuation of the battle and how it'll unfold as soon as possible. Let me know what you are looking forward to in the comments section below. Press the like button if you enjoyed the video, and if you don't want to miss out on future JJK chapter reviews like this one, definitely subscribe and hit that bell icon. Thank you for watching the video. There's no break next week for Jujutsu Kaisen, so the wait isn't that long. I'll see you in the next video.